What if you had instant analytics on your PDP images and a faster way to create content that performs better? That's what we're diving into in today's episode, how top brands and retailers are using analytics and automation to stay ahead across retail media and the digital shelf. It's Rapid helps teams scale smarter. They analyze image performance, they help you create optimized assets for retail media networks and the digital shelf, and they integrate directly with PIM and DAM systems for seamless execution. Brands like Pepsi, Mondelez, and Instacart use its Rapid to go beyond basic tools to uncover gaps in PDP and retail media performance by analyzing the images themselves, not just the count. Streamline banner creation across hundreds of formats for Amazon Ads, Walmart Connect, and other retail and social platforms, and launch high-performing content more than 80% faster across e-commerce and marketing channels. If you're buried in manual work or struggling to keep up, this episode and It's Rapid will show you a better way. Visit itsrapid.ai to learn more.
Welcome to Beyond the Shelf with Dave Feinlieb. This show is an open exploration of the people and process behind e-commerce. Through conversations with innovators in the space, we learn the stories of these leaders and their strategies for e-commerce success. We publish new episodes every Tuesday morning, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And now, here's your host, Dave Feinlieb.
Welcome back to Beyond the Shelf. I'm Dave Feinlieb, your host, and in this episode, I'm speaking with Simon Angove, CEO of Syndigo, to unpack one of the biggest stories in commerce data, the company's acquisition of OneWorldSync. We'll explore what this merger means for brands, retailers, and the broader digital shelf ecosystem, from unlocking richer content experiences to improving the flow of trusted data across channels. Simon also shares his leadership perspective on integrating two powerhouse organizations, building culture through transformation, and how AI and automation are shaping the next generation of content management and product intelligence. Simon, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Dave.
Tell us about you. You've got a fantastic background, very unique across entrepreneur and operating. How'd you get your start in the space?
Yeah, so, in the second half of my career, all of which has been spent in tech, by the way, I've very much been a CEO for large enterprise software businesses, particularly those that are private equity backed. But actually, in the first part of my tech career, I was very much a technology entrepreneur and startup CEO guy. So, everything from my company, Brickstream, where we literally put cameras in the ceilings of retail stores and we could track customers through the environment and gather all kinds of valuable insights, to companies that did workforce optimization, where we made sure that the stores were properly staffed to deliver wait times and sales associate interactions. So still consider myself today at Syndigo something of an entrepreneur in residence, and, innovation to this day is an important part of our ethos.
I love it. What a great background, both on the operating side, but also the bigger picture of things. So wonderful experience. You've been very active lately. You picked up OneWorldSync, very exciting acquisition. Tell us about that.
It's really advancing our mission, which has been constant for a long, long time, which is helping brands and retailers deliver winning product experiences on every shelf where their customers shop. When you think about delivering those experiences, there's a ton of complexity behind the shelf, behind delivering those experiences. There's an explosion of data, there's an explosion of products, there's a dramatic change in how customers shop, their journeys, the experiences that they expect, and clearly a tremendous proliferation of all the places where customers' products are sold, both offline and online. So by acquiring OneWorldSync, we sort of improved our positioning in how we can help retailers and brands tackle some of those issues. So, for example, talking about, the importance of managing this ballooning data. Right now, we've got product information management, master data management, tools that can manage all the information about your products, the customers you sell to, the locations where you do business, the vendors that you do work with, and all the tools to be able to govern and manage that data at scale, right? That single source of truth is foundational, not just to delivering consistent experiences across every channel, but obviously it's also foundational today to any successful AI strategy. So that was one important thing, right? Particularly bringing those capabilities to the heritage One Will Sync customer base. The second is I spoke about all the places where brands and retailers now do business. Clearly an important part of what we got from One Will Sync is expanding our network. So we now have over 15,000 brands doing business with over 3,500 retailers and distributors, right? This network is over 3 times larger than our nearest competitor. So clearly allowing us to deliver brand experiences to more and more places than ever. It was also about expanding our data pool. So today with the combination, we control 95% of the GDSN data pool. And this is important because it means that brands can successfully publish data to one data pool and retailers can successfully subscribe to one data pool to meet most of their requirements. Another important piece was our ability to manage and optimize the entire digital shelf. So as we know, it's not just brand curated content, retailer curated content on the product description page. It's also important now for user generated content. It's a major driver in purchase consideration. And importantly, user generated content, UGC, is not just important to a human customer. It's now very important to a machine customer. These shopping LLMs that are surprisingly risk averse, and an important signal for them is, can I trust this product? And this is where ratings and reviews was also critically important. So, we're the only PXM provider out there today that can manage and optimize the entire digital shelf. And then the last piece is just around scale, right? We've grown our bench now to over 1,500 employees, people that are deeply versed in retail, in consumer brands, and all things product experience management. And it just gives us a ton more capacity to innovate and better serve our customers.
This is great. So you really cover the whole spectrum of what someone would need to build their capability set. Sounds like both digital shelf, but also in the store, in the real world, so to speak.
Yeah, everyone forgets about the store. Yes, most of the new growth is coming from online, but the brick and mortar store still represents 80% spend in the retail economy. So we don't consider ourselves just a digital shelf PXM provider. We consider ourselves an every shelf PXM provider.
Tell us about timing in the market. First off, maybe frame up what you're seeing in the market, and then why was it sort of the right time to put the two companies together, and also some of the other more recent acquisitions that you've made.
Yeah, so it's something that we've been considering for a long time. And when you think about some of the strategic rationale I just went through, growing the network, growing the data pool, and the portfolio to cover the entire digital shelf, it's something conversations we've been having on and off with One Will Sync for a long time, and finally decided at the end of last year it was time to move. And a few drivers for that. One was, as we met with customers, it was clear that they were and remain incredibly frustrated by the sprawl of different applications they have to use in their environment, right? I met with one customer yesterday who has a different ERP, a different master data management, a different PIM, different core syndication, different enhanced syndication, different digital shelf analytics, different digital asset management platform, different ratings and reviews platform. And what it drives is tremendous inefficiency, but most importantly, because of the lack of interoperability between all these systems, it slows time to market, right? And as we know, the speed of modern commerce is only accelerating. So, time to market is something that we hear a lot from our customers. So, this was an opportunity to drive some consolidation and make sure that you can work with a single tech stack to meet all of those types of e-commerce needs. The second was, as I said, the sort of growing number of places where brands need to do business. And it was clear that the network was extremely important. So, we moved, as I said, to more than double the size of our network. And then the third was, clearly the rise of AI. And as I said earlier, foundational to any successful AI strategy is data. So our ability to bring, PIM and MDM, product information management, master data management, to a broader customer set, but also to grow our data assets, really fortifies and better positions us to help customers with their AI strategy.
So best of both worlds, to put it another way.
Yes.
I want to kind of zoom out. We talked a little about Syndigo, One World Sync, about integration. You've held a lot of leadership roles in your career. Tell us a little about culture and talent and how you go about aligning those when you bring these organizations together?
Yeah, sure. And I'd actually say, Dave, that I think culture and talent are arguably the most important thing, even more important than your product integration strategy. And the good news with the combination of One Will Sync and Syndigo is that it became clear early on in our conversations that there was a lot of sort of affinity over values and culture. So things like customer centricity, acting with speed and urgency, collaborating across the team and across the company. One of our values is actually #unstoppable together. So that actually made the cultural integration go pretty smoothly. I would also say from a talent standpoint and leadership standpoint, this was an opportunity to really both grow the team, but also to upgrade the team. And, when I was at sales kickoff in January earlier this year, it was the first time we had both commercial teams in the room together. I was just, one, so impressed with the level of engagement and energy, but also just the high quality of the conversations.
So you've kind of saw it with the two orgs, and then when you brought it together, it sounds like it materialized.
Yeah, and it's not always easy when you're bringing together two companies that were former competitors as well, right? Because you've been sort of brainwashed to think the other side is the evil empire. Then you actually found out it's quite the opposite. We're cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
I would say as well, from a product integration standpoint, we made decisions, quickly and decisively there. And it really is about building the best of the best that eventually, both sets of heritage customers can upgrade to. And, we're well ahead executing on that plan. And the last thing I would say about this integration is all around communication. We're doing it frequently, we're doing it transparently, and we're doing it at a level of detail. And that's also been important too. And I would just say, we closed this deal September 1, and I'm, super thrilled with where we are just 120 days after announcing the acquisition.
This episode of Beyond the Shelf is brought to you by It's Rapid. It's Rapid is the platform Pepsi, Mondelez, Instacart, and hundreds of other leading brands and retailers use to build personalized content at scale. Whether that's images, videos, or product descriptions for their product detail pages, shoppable videos or banners for their digital ad campaigns, or sell sheets for sales enablement, brands that use It's Rapid are able to produce high-quality, on-brand content on average more than 80% faster than category competitors. To find out more, please visit itsrapid.ai.
Tell us a little about the customer. You mentioned the sales kickoff, but some of the benefits that your customers are seeing from the integration.
I think part of it is obviously our ability to offer product information management, master data management, and clearly that single source of truth is more important than ever to the heritage One Will Sync base. It's the opportunity to take user-generated content in power reviews, right? So ratings and reviews and FQ&A that we got from One Will Sync, and to be able to offer that to our heritage Syndigo customers. And then it's all about the network, right? Now both sets of heritage brand customers have a much larger community of retailers and distributors they can work with. And, inversely, retailers now have a much larger community of brands in their supply chain that they can work with.
So it sounds like larger scale, bigger capability set, more comprehensive overall.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about the whole digital shelf, more places to deliver those experiences and a greater, bench of talent to help you be successful.
Yeah. You must talk to customers every single day. You mentioned you're on the road all the time, virtually. What are you seeing in the customer base as you're talking to them here in 2026?
Clearly it's a lot of the challenges that I spoke about. Surprisingly, even in very large consumer brands, it's amazing how lean they run. So it's really, a lot of what we're doing in terms of helping them, manage their data, trust that data, make sure it's complete, make sure it's accurate, the ability to distribute that to as many places where they do business as possible, and to manage all aspects of that digital shelf experience, but also that in-store experience as well. And then obviously, you can't step into a room today without someone raising AI, particularly agentic commerce.
Yeah.
So, a lot we're doing there to help our brands as well. So it's not just about winning those human customers. Now it's about winning those machine customers as well.
A lot of folks that we talk to here on Beyond the Shelf want to know, where are customers in their adoption of AI? Where are they and where should they be? I'd love to hear about what you're seeing around AI, the kind of the real world, the practicalities of it.
Yeah, I would say last year, I think a lot of it was around experimentation. And I think this year we are starting to see a lot more operationalization of AI.
Yeah.
And when I think about, what we're doing and have been doing to help retailers is that it did start with using AI to either, automate a discrete mundane task, or it's about surfacing insights.
Right.
So, we call those Go pilots, as a play on the word co-pilots in Syndigo. So this was everything from automatically finding anomalies in data, automatically classifying data, successfully distributing data from brand to retailer. So the brand content's being transformed to meet retailer requirements. It's around writing marketing copy. It's around finding errors in images online, right? It was all these Go pilots. And we are seeing a lot more adoption of these pilots now. And what we announced earlier this week at Shop Talk was Agentic PXM. And you think of that as basically daisy chaining a lot of these discrete Go pilots together to automate more end-to-end workflows, right? So we call it Synapse. And what Synapse is doing is that it's orchestrating the execution of all of these Go pilots, either sequentially or in parallel. Right. And the moonshot there is eventually you can automate the entire creation, delivery, and optimization of a product description page with a human in the loop as needed. So we are seeing, we are beginning to see some adoption there. We just signed off on a very successful project with Pepsi, for example. And I think when it comes to agentic commerce, no one's crystal ball is very good around what agentic commerce really means, right? But what I can say is that these LLMs are surprisingly risk averse, right? If they can't understand a product, they're not going to discover it, and they're not going to recommend it. And again, that does come back to foundational data that is accurate and complete. I think there are some leaders in the industry, folks like Target, clearly who are racing ahead.
Yeah.
But I think there's we're all going to learn a lot over the coming months around what agentic commerce really means for our industry.
Great insights. Do you have any kind of words of wisdom or rules for the road as customers, brands, retailers, everyone in the ecosystem is thinking about how they might adopt more AI capabilities?
Yeah, I do think it comes back to making sure that you've got, accurate product data on the page, that it's complete, that it's up to date, and it's machine readable. I mean, clearly, for example, AI doesn't read bullets, they read narratives. I think it's important that it's understood and it's trusted. And this is where reviews are very important, because AI will read reviews and then try to understand, based on what real people are saying, does this match the intent of my shopper? And then clearly looking at things like ratings to understand, is this product worthy? Should it be recommended? So I think, that's very important, making sure that you have sort of AI ready product data on your digital shelf. And just last thing I'll say, that since you raised brick and mortar before, right? Shopping journeys today aren't like they were in your and my day, Dave, right? They aren't linear. We don't search for something, discover it, assess it on the digital page and purchase it all often in a single channel. I mean, now, especially for younger generations, these shopping journeys could be very different, right? I could see sort of an influencer recommendation on Instagram. I could then go into my mobile app and browse thebrand.com. I could go in store to assess the product. While I'm there, I could look up ratings and reviews. Then I may see, a sponsored ad in the store, giving me a 10% discount. I may use AI to narrow down my options. And what's important is, whether that's AI, social, mobile, e-com, what's important is that brand experience, that product experience is consistent across all of those channels.
Yeah. So many touch points is really what you're getting at. And I could start at anywhere in the journey, and I've got to be present as a brand for all of those in order to make the sale.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Zooming out, tell us about Syndigo. What's on the road ahead? What's kind of, where do you see Syndigo's role in the broader ecosystem?
It all comes back to the mission, which has been constant for a long time, and it's helping retailers and brands deliver winning product experiences on every shelf, and that's both for human and machine customers. So we'll continue to drive innovation. I mean, as you know, we launched Product Experience Cloud for brands and retailers last year. It is the broadest portfolio, all the tools needed to build and deliver those winning experiences. Clearly, a ton of investment in AI. As I mentioned just this week at Shop Talk, we announced Agentic PXM, and clearly we'll continue to invest in embedding AI all throughout the platform. And obviously, it's making sure that our customers are ready to win the new battle for the machine customer. And we will advance this both by continuing to invest in our own R&D. We spend 20% of product revenue on R&D, but we'll also continue to do strategic tuck-in acquisitions. And these acquisitions are really around leaning into the future of where commerce is going. So an example would be, Tagstar, who we acquired 2 weeks ago. And what they do is they deliver real-time contextual messages above the fold to really inspire confidence to purchase in a consumer. So when you think about it, depending on the category, today, anywhere from 50 to 80% of e-commerce is done on a mobile device. Bounce rate's 50%. Time to engage a shopper is 3 seconds. Nobody's scrolling down to read all this great brand or retailer curated content. And this is where, for us, Tagstar plays a critical role in using AI to read down the page based on the shopper intent. What are the messages I want to amplify above the fold? It could be social proof. It could be product attributes to amplify, all with the purpose of engaging and converting that shopper. So again, an example of sort of leaning into the future. And this time it's all around mobile and social.
Simon, you've got such a great grasp on the space, so much depth and knowledge. I feel like we could talk for hours about MDM, product detail pages, AI, agentic, agent to agent, all kinds of great topics. But I want to give you our rapid rundown, a few quick questions to close out the episode. So the first one is, what is one word you would use to describe Syndigo right now?
Conductor.
Conductor.
And I would say conductor because there's a lot of different parts to what it takes to win at commerce that need to be orchestrated. So different parts of the shopping journey.
Yeah.
Different trading partners, retailer to brand, which in the future could not just be human to human, it could be bot to bot. So I would say it's being the conductor to make sure that all these pieces come together to deliver winning commerce outcomes.
A piece of advice you would give to other leaders who are leading through transformation.
Yeah, I would say, I sort of touched on this earlier, but I'd say one is move boldly and courageously to make big decisions, ones that you've got to announce day one. So I think about, One World Sync, where we announced the leadership team, the organizational structure, the product strategy, and so on day one. I would say the second is, once you've done that, move very quickly and very decisively. I mean, with One World Sync, we had to out of necessity, and we got 75% of the job done in the first 100 days. So move quickly. One of our values is hashtag always accelerate. And then the third is, as you're going through all of this change, communicate quickly, communicate transparently with all of the constituents. These are partners, employees, and clearly customers as well.
A recent innovation in commerce or retail that you find inspiring?
It's got to be Tagstar. That's why we bought the company, Dave.
I love it. And a trend in AI that you're most excited about?
Come on. It's got to be agentic commerce. Hate to disappoint you.
All right. Agentic commerce. I love it. Simon Angove, CEO of Syndigo. Thank you so much for joining me today here on Beyond the Shelf. It was an absolute pleasure. And I hope you'll join us again on the show.
Fantastic, Dave. Thanks so much for your time.
That's it for this week's episode of Beyond the Shelf. If you enjoy the show, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. It really helps us grow. And feel free to share us with your colleagues so they too can hear weekly perspectives from the brightest minds in e-commerce. You can also check us out on LinkedIn, where we post clips from each episode, share Dave's takes on breaking industry news, and much more. Beyond the Shelf is a production of It's Rapid. Our host is Dave Feinlieb, and our producer is Jake Musiker. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Shelf.